got pretty cold. Oh, last night it got bitter cold.
I got up this morning, I was watching the news, and it said it was down to, it was 4 degrees or something like that, and I'm lying over at the airport. So.
Yeah.
Well, today is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2002. I'm interviewing Mr. Nicholas Lamberti, born on January 2nd, 1925. His current address is 1210 Epworth Circle, Elmira, New York, 14901. My name is Jason Harmon, and I'm the collections manager here at the Chemung County Historical Society in Elmira, New York. And Mr. Lamberti, if you just want to share the branch of service that you were in, your rank, and where you served.
The U.S. Navy. I had my training, basic training at Sampson Naval Base in upper New York State. And after 6 or 8 weeks of boot training, I was transferred to Philadelphia Navy Yard. I was assigned to sea duty, and I was waiting for my ship to be completed and outfitted before we took it for a cruise to South America. We went through the Chesapeake Bay, which at that time was totally polluted. We could tell by the water in our restrooms that has continuous water flowing for flushing system, and the water was black. You wouldn't believe it. Up until now, I guess they recently, as years went by, they have cleaned it up. But it was quite an experience. We took the ship to South America for what we call a Shakedown Cruise, to take all the bugs out of it. And we saw part of the country and the way people lived there. This was back in 1943, in about midsummer, and it was quite an experience. From there, we brought the ship back to Philadelphia, and they outfitted it with their guns and whatever. And from there, we headed to San Diego, California. This was toward the end of 1943. And we were there only for 1 day. We picked up anything we could carry, from personnel, airplanes, airplane engines, parts of any kind, and we continued from San Diego to the submarine base in Pearl Harbor, which is Oahu Island. And from there on, we joined the fleet, which was Admiral Nimitz was the commander of the 3rd Fleet, which would also become the 5th Fleet because of the change in commands. After a certain period of time, they changed commands so that commanders would take a break or a rest. And we went island hopping from Macon and Tarawa Islands for the beginning, and through all the different islands that we supported, air cover and bombing and strafing with the rest of the carriers and the fleet. But I have to explain that the fleet, the 3rd Fleet, was composed of 4 groups which was called task forces. Each ship, the ships were called man of war. Each group had 4 carriers with a screen of at least 15 destroyers for firepower, and with an outer course of either 2 cruisers or 1 or 2 battleships for firepower. During these invasions of these islands, we supported, we covered, we actually softened up the beachheads for maybe a month, and we went in and out, and we'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast, which consisted of a very quick breakfast, and then they scheduled the planes were all fueled and ready to take off before daylight. And we were in and out, and we were under a lot of firepower. The Japanese would send out aircraft to try to destroy our ships, and during the course of the amount of battles that we did coverage for each island, I think we didn't lose, but we had 2 cruisers picked off, torpedoed in our group, which were towed back to another island to be repaired. As they were being towed, they were under attack again by Japanese, but they managed to get back to a base where they could undergo repairs. We were attacked many times, not in the early part of the war, but during the latter part. The Japanese got real desperate, and they started to train the young pilots with just a few hours of flight training as Kamikaze, die for the Emperor. And they would come at, they went for the aircraft carriers mostly, and tried to direct the plane into the forward elevators of the carriers, which would more or less disrupt the launching of their planes. Planes on the carriers were catapulted into flight. Maybe it's a little hard for me to explain it, but it's a sort of a track below decks, a steel track with a hook that is hooked onto the planes, and there's a compressor system down below that is started, and there's a signal man on the flight deck signaling the pilot to rev up his engines before takeoff. And the minute this signal man gave the signal that there's a man at the controls for this catapult, would hit the lever, and that plane would be shot off the front end of it would be about maybe 50 to 75 feet, and it would go right up the air. But there were times that we lost planes that didn't make it, and and we'd have to send the destroyers there around to pick up the pilot. The plane would be history, whatever. One of the worst things that can happen to a ship at sea is fire. It's the worst thing possible. My job on the ship was, my rate was second class shipfitter. That's it before I get discharged with that rank. And my job was firefighting and repair, damage and repair. I saw quite a few planes, Japanese enemy planes, crash, plane and all, into ships. And their theory was they would, when they attacked, it would be late in the afternoon, and they would go so low along the water, they get in between ships and tried to get the ships firing at each other to try to hit the plane. They pulled every dirty trick in the book that you could think of. But as time went on, everything we did at sea, we had ammunition brought to us, ammunition ships. We had oilers, and we had supply ships, and we had a hospital ship. Anybody that was injured or hurt was transferred to one of those. We refueled at sea, replaced any planes that were lost. They had these small jeep carriers that carried planes. They would know just how many to replace, and we continued. Our longest stretch at sea, the longest period without seeing land, was 67 days. In that period of time, the crew was so, I don't know how to explain it, but you would be ready to fight your best friend. That's how I don't know how you call it now, but you get uptight. Any little thing bothered you. And I saw many ships get hit. After we, let's see, during one of the strikes on one of the islands, we ran into a typhoon. And the 4 groups, most of the ships were in trouble, deep trouble. That was the magazine that I showed you, that when you have a heavy cruiser lose 100 feet of the bow and still be able to come back, that is something. We lost a couple of destroyer escorts that completely capsized. Total crew was gone. I think one man survived on one of those ships, but it's so devastating that I was really afraid that the ship was going to break apart myself. It was devastating. I mean, if you're out at sea and a wave comes and you're on the flight deck and you look down and the ship is setting on, center of the ship is on top of this wave, and you go to look down, there's 100 feet down there. There's nothing there on either end, the bow or the stern. It would be a hollow, just like a black hole. But we managed to survive. We lost all our planes. We caught fire because of after the planes are out on patrol and they return to the ship, they usually degas the planes. And when this happened, the afternoon before this happened, we were tied up to a tanker loading fuel, and on the other side of us was an ammunition ship loading in bombs and ammunition. And I was on the flight deck when they would, this big crane that they have these, everything is put in these nets, and they would land it on top of the flight deck, and these personnel would disperse like these 100-pound bombs. They would put them on these little dollies with rollers, and they would move them over to the elevator, and the elevator would take them down to the magazines. And as the water started getting a little rough, and pretty soon I saw a 500-pound bomb rolling around the flight deck up there. And it landed on the catwalk, and I saw this officer nudge it. I didn't know how he did it. Nudge it so it went overboard. It was up on the catwalks. There's just railings, you know, that are this high, maybe another one higher, and there's open space there. So if you lost your balance, you'd go overboard. And we had a couple of guys that did follow. Well, a couple of, I used to call them deck apes. They guys wanted to get a bucket of water and ties a pail onto the rope and throw it, the rope onto the pail and throws it down, and you got yanked overboard. And normally, if you're out in enemy waters, they won't even turn around. No. But during these, the living quarters aboard ship, of course we were in the South Pacific, was very, very hot. And the bunks were 3 high. Sleeping compartments were crowded, and the heat was intense. I broke out with heat rash, and it was, you would get these blisters, and when they would break, they would keep spreading. And the only way I was able to cure it, I would try to get, we had a compartment way down below deck where the steering control was. And it was air conditioned down there. And every chance I got, I'd get down there and I finally got rid of the heat rash, but it was really something. I had this other stuff that was called impetigo. That was another thing that would get in between your toes and in between your fingers, and these blisters would form, and that stuff would spread. And when we got to Pearl Harbor, I stopped in some of the drugstores there, and I asked the pharmacist about this stuff, and he had some stuff. All it was called was HF on a little bottle, and that stuff cured it. It worked. After I got out of the service, I had a few instances where I got a touch of it, and I tried to find that stuff in the United States. I couldn't, nowhere to be found. So it was really, really something. After we caught fire during that typhoon, we went back to Pearl Harbor, and then back to Seattle into dry dock for repairs. We were there for probably a month or two. This was around Christmas time. And that was the first Christmas that I was able to get home. They gave us a 10-day leave, and half of it was spent traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast. And it was a nightmare just getting from one coast to the other and then back. After we got back from our leave, the ship was all under repair. We went back out to sea and back out to Ford Island, which was the sub base at Pearl Harbor. And as we were coming to tie up alongside this dock. There was a large aircraft carrier tied up, and we were to tie up behind it and go aboard and get spare parts because this ship had damage that you wouldn't believe. When we pulled up behind it, I said to myself, well, what hit this thing? I mean, and we went aboard it. It was a USS Franklin, and they had shown later on, during the war, after the war, they showed movies on it, and they were on fire so bad because they were hit by a Japanese sneak suicide, Kamikaze, and the ships had all their planes on deck, all loaded for a strike around the Philippines, and the pilot went down and hit right in that flight deck with all those, their own rockets and stuff went off from their own planes. And after we got down below decks, it looked like Swiss cheese down there. That's how bad it was. Out of a crew of 2,700 personnel, 1,100 brought it back. They brought it back to either New York or Philadelphia, and they had to cut the ship off at the waterline and rebuild it. That's how bad it was. Unreal. There was some real bad. There was a couple of large carriers. One of them, I think it was the Ticonderoga. He used to call it the Unlucky, whatever it was, because it must have got torpedoed 2 or 3 times. It could drive a Mack truck through the holes, but they seemed that it was just an unlucky ship. It was just, I couldn't believe it. A couple of times when your task force is maneuvering and ready to take off strike planes in the morning, each ship is going 30 knots into the wind. That's in order to launch your planes. And as the command is announced, each ship turns automatically. And there were a few times when somebody didn't get the message, and a few times we almost got rammed by one of the battleships. And I was sitting on this deck, and all of a sudden it was on our battle stations, and everything started to, I mean, shake every which way. It was early in the morning, and so later on I says, what the heck happened this morning? And somebody says, well, one of the heavy cruisers turned late and almost rammed us. So we were never hit by shells or planes. Most of the damage was done either by planes landing, which is another situation where a plane could crash. It may come in with one wheel, or it may come in with maybe the flaps aren't working or something, and they would, and if they got through, when they land, there's these steel cables that go across the decks, and they got a tail hook. If the plane lands, there's a signal man with flags, and he's on a platform to the side of the rear of the ship, and there's a big net down there because a lot of times the pilot of that plane didn't have much choice, and he would have hit the signal man. So he jumps down that net. Yeah, I mean, but they used to come back with bombs that didn't release. They used to come back with rockets that didn't release. And you had to be awful careful. We never had any problem with any of them going off after the plane landed. But like I say, when we were in that Typhoon, we lost all our planes. Everything went overboard. All the ones on the flight deck and the ones on the hangar deck burned, so they had to they got rid of them, throw them overboard. That's how bad it was. That was our worst thing, was with that storm. We used to get, when we used to pull into a harbor in these islands, there wasn't much there. All the ships would pull in. They give us liberty, and a couple of times they would have beer. They would allow each man 3 beers, and they take you and put you on one of these landing crafts, and you get out to the beach, and they would have benches and places to sit down. Everything would be just hot as ever. 3 beers would about knock you out. I saw a guy wanting a beer so bad that these were bottles, and he wanted a beer so bad after he drank his that he went around picking up all these bottles and drained the last couple drops out of each one until he got a full bottle and sat down there and drank it. It was unreal. But yeah, let's see if there's anything else. Well, after my basic training, my mother got real sick. There was 8 kids in the family, and we were very poor. And due to the size of her, she was real small. Every winter she would come down with this bronchitis. So she got real sick, and as I came home on leave, after we got situated in the Philadelphia Navy Yard, I came home and saw her at the hospital. They got her well before they could operate on her, and they went to take one of her lungs out. So the operation went okay, but she had to be put in an oxygen tent, and being in an oxygen tent, it's so cold that she caught pneumonia, and she didn't make it. So that was the last time I saw her before they operated, and then she didn't pull through the operation. So through the Red Cross, I contacted them and tried to get leave, and for some reason I couldn't get leave, so I went home. She had died, and I stayed for the funeral. I was AWOL. And when I got back, I was restricted. I had to go in front of the captain's mast. It's like a trial, and my penalty was I was restricted to the Philadelphia Navy base until we went to sea. So that wasn't too bad anyway. Then another time after we pulled into San Francisco for, I think this was, I'm not sure if that was, after we got repaired, we went to San Francisco to pick up our flight personnel and planes, and we, oh, I don't know where that San Francisco, it was Seattle. And Seattle, in order to get to town, you had to take the ferry from the Navy Yard to Bremerton. You have to cross this, I don't know what it's, a lake, or there's a lot of that. And we went out and got smashed. I wound up in some girl's trailer that worked in a shipyard, and I didn't get back to the ship. So the next day I went down to the dock to see if the guys were coming ashore again. And if they hadn't, the ship would have left without me. But I saw the guys coming, so I was happy. So I got back to the ship. I was AWOL overnight. So I was restricted, but how could you be restricted when you're out at sea and can't go anywhere anyway? So that was twice I was AWOL, but I didn't get broken or anything. At that time, I don't think I had a rank anyway. I may have been third class then. I didn't get the second class till later on near the end of the war. And I was discharged at Lido Beach, Long Island. And actually that's where I was brought up. I was brought up on Long Island. So, but here I am in Elmar.
I just had a couple back in the very beginning. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
Drafted. I was drafted. Matter of fact, my birthday is January 2nd, and February the 18th I was at Sampson. That's how fast they took me.
Wow.
Actually, I was born in Italy.
Right, I saw that.
And my father was in World War I, and when he came to the U.S., he met my mother in Brooklyn, someplace in Brooklyn. He got a job there, and this was after World War I, and he had 2 kids. And he was born in Italy. My oldest brother and sister were born here. And after my oldest brother was 2 years old and my sister was 1 year old, he decided to go back to Italy to his parents, which were like dirt farmers. And he stayed there long enough to have 5 more kids. And then he left us there and came back to the U.S. and went to work in Brooklyn and saved up enough money to buy this little bungalow on Long Island. And then he came back over and got us all and brought us back. So that was my childhood. But I tell everybody I have 2 birthdays. I was born in Italy on December the 15th, 1924. And at the time, Italy had compulsory military training. And so my father waited 17 days to register me, which carried it into the new year, which was January 2nd. The old timers went by the old system. That way it kept me a year younger. He was looking 20 years ahead to keep me out of the military. And so that's why I have 2 birthdays. I went by December the 15th for years, and then before I got out of high school, I quit high school. I had to bring my birth certificate in, and it had January 2nd on it, and it was made out of Italian anyway. So, but I had to show that in different places up here in Elmira when I got married and when I went to work at Bendix back in the 60s. So that was it. So I still got 2 birthdays. My daughter says, "What do you want for your birthday, Dad?" I'll say, "Which birthday?"
Yeah. Twice as many presents.
But my oldest brother was drafted into the Army in 1940 it was supposed to be for 1 year. That was before the World War II broke out. And as time went on, he never came back home because the war broke out during that year that he was in there. And so it was 5 years before he came back home. He survived the Battle of Normandy. He was on Normandy Beach D-Day. He survived that. My next older brother, my father was in World War I, and my next older brother was in the Army, and then I was drafted, but the next brother was drafted, and I was drafted, and my youngest brother, he forged his way in. Just before the end of the war, he lied his age. He was living in Elmira. That's how I come here. And so he wanted to go in the service, so he lied his age and went in. And my father when I came home on leave, it was in 1944, he was sort of upset and was going to try to do something about getting him out, and I told him to leave him alone because he had a roof over his head and he's 3 meals a day, and there wasn't much that they could do about it anyway, so I said, just leave him there. So he served his time, and he went to Japan and saw the after effects of the atom bomb. He wasn't there when it happened, but he hadn't gotten there. The fleet, toward the end of the war, we were patrolling along the Japanese mainland, and finally all the commandos got together, and each ship has a I don't know what you would call it. They have a certain amount of Marines on each ship to guard the captain and guard prisoners, mostly guard duty. We pulled into Tokyo Bay, and it was after they had dropped the bomb, to see if we could secure whatever we could. The fleet pulled in there. They took each Marine off the ships and put them ashore to hold things down until the U.S. Army got there. And then we pulled out of Tokyo Bay and headed for the United States. It took us, oh my God, forever. We stopped at different islands. We picked up passengers that had sleeping sicknesses and people that were, hurt during the war, malaria, and there was all sorts of jungle diseases from the hot areas in the South Pacific. Right. And we got back and we pulled back into Philadelphia. And that's where the ship went to. I don't know what happened to it afterwards.
Now, what was it like pulling into Pearl Harbor the first time, a few years after the attack had happened? Was there any kind of, what was the emotional feeling on the ship?
You didn't really see anything. The only thing that you saw with the battleships that were sunk there, they had sort of markers, or what do you so call it?
Buoy kind of.
Yeah, they had places to show where the ships were, and yeah, I can't remember which ones went down there. But during the war, they had some of the things that I didn't think about, like if you're stressed out or anything while you're a crew member. The Japanese had so many tricks, and at the time they had Tokyo Rose. I don't know if you ever heard of this incident. She was a radio announcer in Japan, and somehow they would acquire things, names of ships that were in combat or in battle, and she would get on that. They called her Tokyo Rose. She would get on and broadcast, oh, you sailors don't have a chance. There were ships that weren't even completed in Philadelphia. They built the New Jersey, the Iowa, New Jersey, and Wisconsin. 3 sets of ships were identical, and one of them was still on the ways down there being built, And Tokyo rose at it that they had sunk this one and sunk that one, and God Almighty, and they got it. They got her after the war, but she wasn't. They didn't do anything to her. That's they would try to break the morale of the crews, because you're out there day in and out, day in and day out, and you know you got no place to go. You do your watches 4 on and 8 off, and just you get up in the morning, have your quick chow line and whatever, and that was life. And it would be so hot down in those compartments. Once you did get to an island, each department would have a chance to take their mattresses and take them up flight deck. They would put up these steel stanchions with the lines on them, and you could hang your mattress out there to what would be, in enemy waters, you had flash-proof covers that went completely around your mattress. Underneath, and they had 2 flaps, or 3, one for where the pillow was supposed to be, and 2 flaps. And when you get out of that bed, out of that sack, no matter how much you sweated the night before, you had to cover them. Because if we got hit, the flash, it would stop the mattresses from catching fire. And like I say, fire was the worst thing that can happen to anybody, any ship at sea. It's disastrous. It's really, really bad. But when we were in that Typhoon, after the explosion, after they didn't degas the planes, and those belly tanks were full of gasoline. The planes were all strapped down with steel cables, and some of the eye bolts that are welded into the deck, they'd swing up and down, pull loose. And one plane went, and they started to, I mean, we were rolling so bad that, and like I say, it happened at 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank God, God forbid if it was at night, I don't think we'd have made it. I doubt if we would have made it. But anyway, when I got down to my battle station, I got blown out of my shoes. The gasoline blew, and it went, anything that was open, the decks, the concussion. We caught fire, and they had to abandon the fire and engine rooms. So there we were out there, and you're on fire, you need water. Well, one guy happened to get back down in one of the fire rooms and get the pumps going. And then as he was coming up, when the gas exploded, he was coming up, and he had this trunk open. They got that little wheel that were only this big, so you could body gear through the explosion. Closed the trunk right on top of him, and they found him hanging there. That guy saved the ship. The guy got them pumps going, and we had water. We had these they're portable handy billies, they call them. They were a thing about big as your chair, with a gasoline run to run a pump. Okay. But they didn't work, and they tried everything. But I say that guy saved the ship by getting those pumps started, and by the time he's trying to get out, but the fire and engine room was getting full of smoke, and they had to get out. And then we lost 2 or 3 men. One time we were tied up in port somewhere. I can't remember where we were. And these guys were told to go down. Then a ship is full of like cobwebs down there. It's full of holes. You got watertight compartments, and the ribs of the ship have sections and holes, and there was some places down there that either were rusting or they were sent down there to chip the paint and repaint them, and they didn't supply the right sort of ventilation. They had these little motor things with these kind of big collapsible hoses that they would send down there, but they got down there and they had this, what they put in paint out there on for ships and stuff is this a dryer. It's like has a vapor, and it'll intoxicate you. And by not having the proper ventilation down there, these guys got down there and they got drunk, and they couldn't find their way out, and they got lost, and they died down there. They had, I don't know how they got them out, but we were tied up at dock. I was down in one of them that we had what they call the forward pump room, way right down in the keel, and we were down there, and I went through one of those experiences, and a couple of guys that were down there before me, they got like half drunk, and so we put down a couple more hoses down when I went down, but you came out of there, it was like groggy, you know, just like drinking alcohol. It was bad. But those accidents happen. What are you gonna do?
Now, you had said your longest stretch at sea was 67 days.
67 days. You get.
Now, what do you do to keep yourself entertained, or to, like you said, you know, to not be irritable, or what do you do?
You're in enemy waters. You don't entertain yourself. If you're tied up in some island, anchored, they have movies that they swap among ships and whatever, and maybe you might get a little mail if you're lucky, and that's life. It's just it's sad. There is not much to do for entertainment, and like I say, if you can't get ashore someplace for liberty, those islands are unreal. I see those land crabs walking through they had little vegetation on them, you know. You'd only go there for maybe a few hours, and maybe a couple of beers or something like that, and then haul you back in like a bunch of cattle in these landing barges, and because they were the people that hauled you from these ships were people that was stationed there on the island. Right. They'd come, load up a bunch of guys, and take them over shore, open up the thing, out you go, and come back when they're ready. That was it. I don't know if I should mention this, but in Pearl Harbor they had government-run houses of prostitution. They were inspected, government inspected. Most of the girls that worked there were from the U.S., American girls. They went there to make the fast buck. And my first liberty ashore at Oahu, Pearl Harbor, we were walking down the street, you know, in your white uniforms, and there was this line out there on the sidewalk. Somebody says, "Hey, what's that line over there?" Somebody says, "Well, that's the chow line." Guys would run over and get in the line. Well, the line was so long that there was down the street, up the stairway, up to this house of prostitution. They'd have 3 or 4 girls working there. There were probably 3 or 4 or 5 places there, but they were government run, and it was pretty decent. And they charged $3 for 3 minutes. And so here you are, 18, 19 years old. You go in there and say, well, give them the $3. What am I going to do with the other 2.5 minutes? Then they had curfews there. You had to be off the streets at 6 p.m. And in order to be out on the streets at 6 p.m. at Pearl Harbor, you had to have special passes. And otherwise, you had to be back to your ship or on some base. You weren't allowed down the streets. And the bars opened after the houses of prostitution closed. The bars were open. If you had any alcoholic product on you, you weren't allowed in these to the prostitutes.
Huh.
Because they didn't want anybody drunk in there to abuse anybody, and so they closed them, and the bars were open about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were shut down at 5 or 6 o'clock. Huh. It was, everything ceased. That was your recreation, if you want to call it that. But it was beautiful there in Honolulu. That flowers, everything was just kind of nice. But when we came into San Francisco, the West Coast, when you went to town, the restaurants and bars had the jukebox system, but it was run like your radio station here, and you would put a coin in your say you were sitting in the booth. They had these slots, a little box like that, right, where you could select songs and whatever, and we were spent so much time in and out of Pearl Harbor and around those islands that we were so sick of the Hawaiians and their music that we got there, and we were sitting there, and somebody kept playing that sweet, I can't remember the name of it, but somebody kept playing that Hawaiian music. This one sailor got up and he said, "Boy, I hope the next SOB that plays one of those songs, they ship you out there, and they keep you there forever." Another thing that, after I got out of the service, I would not go near a meatball or a hamburger.
What caused that? We
had frozen ground beef. It looked like huge loaves of bread. That's the way they used to ship it. And at one time my battle station was around the galley, which is around the kitchens.
Uh-huh.
And I could look in there. They had screens like, and they would have these huge pots that they would cook in. They were about this high. The outside looked like they were copper, and they would bring these big loaves of meatloaf in there, ground beef, right, and put them in there and let them thaw. Well, those cooks, they only wore with the t-shirts. They'd roll them right up to here like that, and they'd be down there, you know, mixing that stuff up.
Right.
And you know, you ever see hamburgers start to get black like, yep, a little bit? And when I came home on leave, I went to my sister's and they fixed spaghetti and meatballs. I said, "No, spaghetti, I said, I won't eat it." I didn't eat a meatball or ground beef. I don't know, I can't remember how many years I wouldn't go near it. We had ground beef. There's so many ways to fix it that they disguise it. It's still ground beef. Yeah. And you get so sick of it that it was unreal. It was really unreal. And we had repair rooms. They call them repair locker. We had 4 of them, one in each section of the ship, and they weren't much bigger than this. You know, we had tools, and we had a two-way, what do you call it, PA system. Yep. And we get to shore, and everybody get a hot plate and a Tylex coffee pot, you know, and The minute you get bad weather, there goes the coffee. The bottom and top both were made of glass. Finally, we used to get the coffee used to come in the beans. They came in bags, 50 or 100-pound bags of beans, and we would grind them on the chip. And a couple times the grinders broke down. So we'd run out of coffee in the repair rooms, and we'd send somebody down to the galley or someplace to get some coffee, you know, the grinds. And the guy said, well, the machines broke down. Well, geez, we brought the beans up, and we broke them up with hammers, and you know, by God, that made pretty good coffee. It actually almost tasted better than the coffee that used the coffee that was ground.
Yeah.
But it was pretty good. And we had a bucket there. And when you got through with the cup, you throw it down in that bucket. And sometimes it would look like the grade of water. You pick up a bucket and go over there and pour yourself a cup of coffee. Unreal. It's really something. And they had in different cities the USOs that helped for entertainment, that if you couldn't get home. But like myself, Philadelphia isn't too far from New York. So any chance I got, I would take the train and get to Penn Station, and then get on the Long Island train and go to my parents, stay overnight, and then I come back the next day if we had to, you know, overnight.
Right.
But it wasn't bad. But some guys are, who knows from what state, and it's tough for the guys to get home. But for me, it wasn't too bad being in Philadelphia. But that was limited anyway. After we got out to sea, out South Pacific, forget it.
Can you share a little bit, Mr. Lamberti, about what you did in the years following the war, after you were discharged, in terms of jobs or anything?
Well, that'll lead to how I got here. During the war, well, my mother died. And just before the war ended, my father remarried. And he married a woman that had a 6-year-old kid out of wedlock. I don't think she had been married before. So I got discharged, and my two older brothers were already home. And I went to work with my uncle, who lived a couple doors away. And he did concrete work and dug cesspools and drainage, whatever. And I went to work with him for a little bit. Well, first, before that, I started setting pins in a bowling alley. That's when they first came out with the automatic pin setters. And we used to jump alleys. And you know what stacking pins are in a bowling alley? Do you ever hear of anything like that? Well, in order to speed a game up for the pin boy, to make as much money as you can, because you're hustling 2 alleys, and some of them guys get up there, they're trying to get that pin boy, they're trying to hurt you, and some of them, they got that ball that comes down there, and boy, so you wrap 2 pins, you cross them, and you hit the first 4, the head pin, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 10. Okay. Those 4 go first, and you grab the next 4, and you actually you put them. You've got 4 pins. You take the 8 and 9 pin, and you slide them up behind 1, 2, 3, the 2 and the 3. Okay. So between the 4, 5, and 6, you got you got 5 pins that are, and 7 and 10 is here. There's nothing in between them.
Right.
And if you get somebody that rolls the ball down real slow, they hit the head pin, they all more or less, and it helps their game.
Right.
And it speeds up the game. You don't have to throw 2 balls down.
Right.
And so then, especially if you get these guys with that real fast ball, they're trying to kill the pinball. Because you stand in the gutters are here, and you up there, you watch the guy throwing the ball, you stand right here. Right, here's the gutter, you got your knee right there. You can't get hurt. But some of them guys throw that ball, hit that head pin, they used to fly like this.
Right.
Before I went into service, we used to set pins down home. There was behind the pit, there was a wall that was from here to that bookshelf away.
Okay.
A concrete wall over there, and there were times when these guys that hit that head pin and would flew out. One of them hit that wall and split in 2. That's how bad some of those guys were. It's the way they hit the head pin. If it hits that, but if you got them pins all together, it shatters it. It kills them. And so them pins don't fly. So I did that for a while. Then I went to work with my that was during the winter time. When spring broke, I went to work with him, and come June or July, here I'd just gotten out of the service, and I used to come home in the afternoon, and I mean, I'm 18, let's see, 18, I'm 21 years old, just come out of the war, and I lay down take a quick nap before supper. Well, somebody's going to wake me, and you all worked out, you know, just when they're picking shovel all day. And I wouldn't get up, you know, funny. My father would open the door and say, he talked broken English. What the hell do you think of this is? A hotel or something? Well, you know, he'd say that, well, I'd get up. I didn't feel like eating then. I'd wash my face, go down the street, see where the guys are, and get down there. And where's everybody at? They went to the movies. Walked, no cars, you know, and everybody walked. Get down in the movies, and we all had a certain section where we all sat and played down in front. I said to the usher, I want to talk to my brother in there. So I went down and seen him, sat down. When the show got out, we used to stop at the diner a block away and get some coffee or some pie or something like that at midnight. Get up to the house, locked out. Can't get in the house. Well, my oldest brother's sleeping, so we tried the cellar door. That's locked. So my brother heard us, and he come down, opened the door. About that time, I said to my younger brother, I says, I'm out of here. I says, I had a seat bag with some clothes. I had a couple $100 saved up, and he had forged his way into the service, and he was, matter of fact, he ran away from home 2 or 3 times. And he and his cousin, when before the war broke out, they were building barracks up around Buffalo. And so they got out of school in the summer, and they went up there and they became carpenter's helpers, young guys, you know. And, well, you know, a young guy is a guy that tell you to do something, and go F off or whatever. So my cousin, he quit, and they come home. Well, my brother didn't want to come home, so he hit Elmira, and he went washing dishes and diners, and everybody, young kid, probably 15 or something like 16, and everybody got to liking him. They called him Junior, and so he got by. He hung around Elmira and hung around. I was in a service. The other 3 of us were in a service. My sisters, everybody had left home. My mother had died. My father was by himself. My sisters moved into apartments, and that was life. It broke the whole family up. So finally, he where was I now? So the younger one didn't come home, the younger one, Omar, and finally when he came home, he rejoined, got out of the Army, and then he rejoined for another hitch, and he came home on leave. And at just about that time, when this happened, he was home on leave, and I says to him, what's this Elmira like? Is there any place to go to work up there? He said, whatever. So I says, let's get the hell out of here. I says, I packed up a sea bag. I had a couple $100. We went down and got the train, went to the Penn Station, took the Greyhound up to Elmira. It was in July of 46. And I've been here since. At first I didn't think about settling down here because of work. And finally I got into the Remington Ram, and got the worst job in there, running a punch press. And everybody was losing fingers, especially the women. The women were trying to get the next piece in that die. They hit the levers, and their hand would be in there before the die came down. They hit the piece they already put in there. And so I said to myself, Jesus, I don't think too much of this. So I heard about, they had a training program for automatic screw machines. So I thought about going on this training program, and I went to see one of the guys that was in charge of the veterans. This was for the veterans. Well, I was running a punch press, and it was getting so that I saw this guy, and he tried to see what he could do about getting me on the training program, and time went on, and finally I came into work one day, and we were down around the washroom, and I says, geez, I've been trying to get on the automatics over there, and I says, if I don't hear anything by the end of this week, I'm out of here. I said, I'm quitting. Well, whether that got back to somebody or what, I don't know, but usually that's the way it is in factories. If you say something down around the wash or coffee machine or where you're washing up, it'll get back somewhere, because I knew that's how things got around. So I came in Friday, and there was a note on the time card to come into this new department and go on training. So I was on through the GI Bill, and I went on training, and I got a toolbox, which I still have. I had it. Well, I spent 40 years running screw machines and from here to hell and back. And there were times when I had to go out of Elmira and down into New York City and New Jersey. I went to New Jersey and to work back in the late 50s, and down into Long Island in the 60s. And during the layoffs, I was laid off from Remington Ram 10 times. 10 times, and at least I learned the trade, and I had to go where the work was. I didn't have any trouble getting a job.
Right.
As long as you had experience, and they grab you in a minute. But you had to go where it was, and right. So there were a couple times my wife was pregnant. We had 2 kids. She was pregnant for the third one, no insurance. And what are you gonna do? But I pulled up my bootstraps, and I was hustling day and night most of my life. We had 4 kids. The oldest one will be 45 February the 13th, and he's going to have a spleen operation. He had 2 heart attacks, 40 years old and 44 years old. Had 2 heart attacks. And he was the healthiest picture of health, but who knows. So I had open heart in 1994. I have a plastic aortic valve, the largest heart valve you've got. and I'm on medication. I feel good. I do what I want. I'm still working outdoors, doing landscaping. Matter of fact, I worked about 7 hours yesterday, and that cold as it was, and I cleaned up. One of my clients has 3 properties. He has this that Wick Electric on 2nd Street, next to Oregon's restaurant. That's his office. He bought the old coke plant and fixed that up beautiful. He's got a huge house on Winnipeg Church, and then he's got this huge 6-unit apartment house on Westwater between Elm and Davis Street. And I take care of the 3 places, and it keeps me busy. Plus I got a few other ones. But other than that, I'm about done for the winter now.
Yeah.
I was there yesterday, and somebody may call me for some little thing if the weather is nice, if the snow is gone. Other than that, I just help out at the Legion during Friday nights at bingo. And we're down. All my brothers have passed away. This year, I lost two more. I had lost one sister. The youngest one died a while back, and I lost the 2 oldest ones this year, this spring. And there's only my only sister that's left. She just turned 80 in October, and I'm going to turn 78 January 2nd. So I'm still kicking. Now I got to go down from here. I'm going over to the VA because I was one of the people that fasted that lost their prescription plan. And so I'm going to the VA to see about getting my prescriptions through the VA. I had asked different people about it, but there's so many unanswered questions, so I'm going down to St. Joe's. They have a clinic there, and I've been to Bath. Matter of fact, back in 1962, I was laid off, and I got a job at Bendix, and they laid me off. I had been there 6 weeks, and I came into work one day, and they says, I don't have to go to urinate.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yep, right downstairs on the 1st floor. There's
Downstairs?
Yep.
And she'd have a barrier. She's living with her boyfriend. He's a boss down on Sullivan Street. But, that's life. So, where were we before that?
I think
I was I went to work at Bendix, and I came in they laid me off. I came in, they got a job there, and I'd been there about 5 weeks, and I came in to work one afternoon, and there's a note on my time card saying, you haven't finished taking all of your physical. I don't know where they came up with that one, so they wanted to see me down first aid, so I went down first aid. They gave me a cardiogram, and so they said, we wanted to come back tomorrow at the same time. I went back the next day. I don't know whether they gave me another cardiogram, and then they said, we want you to go to the RNet and have a chest x-ray. I went up there. That was like Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Come Friday, it says, sorry, we can't take a chance on you. You got a heart murmur, and we can't take a chance on you, and they laid me off. So from there, I got $1 in my pocket,